So do you hunger to feed on the blood and suffering of innocence? Well, let's delve a little deeper into this vampiric mythology with Bloodlust, Subspecies 3. With the coming of the dawn, the now-turned vampire Michelle is unable to escape the clutches of Radu's mother, who uses magic to revive her ghoulish son. Escaping back to Castle Vladislav, Radu attempts to tame his fledgling, but his obsession with her undermines his power over her. She manipulates him into teaching her the secrets of vampire existence and how to harness her vampiric powers, but once she learns to survive on her own, she intends to destroy him. However, her sister Becky attempts to find a way to rescue her from the harrowing castle, alongside Mel Thompson of the U.S. Embassy, Inspector Marin, and a trained CIA commando. Yet Michelle's bloodlust has forced her to succumb to her vampiric desires, and even if she can truly end Radu once and for all, her damnation may be entirely inescapable. So February 16th, 1994 saw the third film of this franchise hit video store shelves across America after having been bumped from an October 1993 release for unspecified reasons, and like I mentioned with the review of Subspecies 2, both of these sequels were shot simultaneously over a 70-day shoot in Romania, which is a kind of a nice thing to do here because you see with a lot of horror sequels where they kind of change directors, it changed a lot of creative individuals from one film to the next. Things look different, they have different makeup effects, people that have a lot of different things changing from film to film, and a lot of different continuity changing as well. When you have something like this where both films are being shot simultaneously, you maintain all the same artistic crew, the same creative people, the same cinematographer and the makeup effects people. Everyone is working at the same time on both films to maintain a good sense of consistency, and then having these things being developed and shot at the same time really makes for the two sequels to be sort of a two-part storyline in a certain way, because obviously Subspecies 2 is sort of the setup to everything, and then Subspecies 3 is sort of the payoff to the storyline. But I do feel like there's some things with Subspecies 3 that don't quite pay off as strongly as they possibly could, because I feel like Subspecies 2 has a nice sort of build-up and everything, has a good solid pace, better than the first film, and just kind of gets things going on a really good pace and really good rhythm and momentum. With Subspecies 3, they kind of have to start the film off a little lower and try to build things up on a different type of level here, because Bloodlust Subspecies 3 is much more character-driven than the first film was, and even the second film was as well. It very much is focused so much more on that pairing between Michelle and Radu in this film, really developing their characters in a much more different type of way that some people might not find too pleasing in a certain way, in terms of just how they further develop and add more depth and layers to the character of Radu, because it was always such that just from the beginning, what I loved about the character was that he was just this pure embodiment of vile, ghastly evil. This guy was just absolutely, had almost like no redeeming qualities. He was just absolute badass, ghoulish looking vampire that just looked so awesome on screen and just became such a fantastic thing to behold for this franchise, an icon of this franchise and of the film studio as well, Full Moon, that just like, it was such a fantastic thing. That's why he is my favorite vampire of all time, because he was just so much of a absolute unwavering badass. But you get a little bit into these sequels where you get more of this depth explored about what really kind of makes Radu tick, what really kind of stirs in his body and everything, in his mind, and whatever is left of his decayed soul inside. It's a very interesting thing to do with this film to further develop Michelle and Radu's relationship here, where it kind of does kind of come together here. These two characters are very much connected very closely throughout this whole film with a very interesting relationship where there is a very strong compulsion between them, but also a repulsion as well, that there is such a desire from Radu to kind of have that eternal love in a certain way, which is kind of borders on that sort of Interview with the Vampire and Rice type of stuff that was kind of going around at the time, and a lot of sort of vampire purists were not terribly fond of. But it's kind of interesting to have that develop here more, because we don't know where else you could take things at this point if you're developing these two characters in a very interesting symbiotic relationship. I don't know where else you could go besides delving further into their sort of dying souls or whatnot. There has to be something more developed between these characters to really kind of delve into it. So that's one of the things that seems probably a little bit argumentative, debatable about this film in the franchise amongst all the fans of, do they really like this sort of more romanticized qualities of it, or do they want to go back to more of the stuff you had in the first and second films, where were just a little bit more pure in a certain way in terms of just the gore and the horror and all that type of stuff, just the vampire actions you had in those first two films. And most evidently here you see so much with the character of Michelle, portrayed wonderfully by Denice Duff in this film, that you just see such an interesting quality where she is sort of embracing being a vampire, but she still has a difficult time coping with it. There is such a, again, she's so compelled with the desire, the bloodlust and everything, and the lust for power and lust to understand what her potential could be as this creature of the night. But it's also just such a difficult thing for her to go all the way and embrace that she loves to feel the blood, but she's also revolted by it, as well as this very interesting dichotomy with a character that I think is very, very well placed by her, that she does such a great job with so much of the sorrow and the sadness and the conflict and the tragic quality of the character of Michelle here, that also brings some of those qualities out in Radu, where, again, he is sort of oddly lovelorn. There is a little bit of that sprinkled into the second film. There is a mention of him wanting to have sort of an eternal love in a certain way, but he kind of quickly goes back to being just that ghastly, grisly type of figure. But this film definitely explores that deeper, because you see this sort of hateful attraction between the two characters that, again, Michelle wants to learn. She wants to learn the power. She wants to learn all this type of stuff. She wants to embrace the power that she feels within herself, but she is just so hateful of Radu for making her into what she is, and just this interesting little subtleties of how things kind of go back and forth in a certain way, and that struggle and that conflict within the character of Michelle here, who, again, I just think Denice Duff does such a very strong and pained performance throughout this whole film. It just really just hits a strong chord that just, again, enhances the sympathy for this character. You're so connected with this character, even if she is very much a victim here and not being a very heroic type of character. There is a great deal of sympathy and everything that you can feel for this character, that you do want to see something better come to her, but she's in this such terrible situation, and just like, you don't know how else this character can go on, even if you get into the, like, again, get into the third act where you feel like there can be a climactic beat, but there's still that problem that she is still a vampire, that even if they defeat Radu, she's still a vampire. How do they deal with that type of thing? So it's a very interesting dynamic to deal with that throughout the whole film. And it's like, the film does delve into a little bit of that romanticism, sort of a Beauty and the Beast type of thing going on between the two characters. There is, again, tragic qualities with both these characters that are explored in a very good, deep type of way, but you could probably say that maybe they don't explore it as deeply or as thoroughly as they possibly could be, because they're kind of limited by about an 82-minute runtime, which I think is a little bit shorter than the second film was. So it's like, it feels like they delve into something, but I feel like there could be so much more that they could just grasp and delve into and just really kind of explore further if they really had the ability, they had the resources to make a longer film to kind of delve into those things in a longer format. But overall, I just think, because you got Anders Hove and Denice Duff working out such amazing chemistry in this film, just so intimate in a certain way, so open, and just have those little moments in the film that just has those touching beats of emotion that are very dark and very dangerous type of stuff to have these two characters exploring this interesting attraction, revulsion type of thing. And that's another one of the little things that makes this series so interesting, is that it just adds these little dynamics between these two main characters that just continues to evolve and just continue to engage an audience to see how these two develop, how they keep moving forward, and just see where things can lead to next. But I think overall these two actors just do a fantastic job hitting off so perfectly with their chemistry, their wonderful emotional performances, and just adding so many more layers to their characters and just moving them forward into a different type of storyline here. And overall the cast again is still solid. You still have all the same people coming back. Kevin Blair, you got Melanie, Shatner and everything. And again you got Haiduc, who is just doing another wonderful piece of work, getting a little bit more time to really shine as Inspector Lieutenant Morin here. Just like watching him in this film as opposed to the previous one, where I think he just has more material to really delve into and really kind of capitalize more on what he has to offer here, that it's just almost like he's a show unto himself, because he has such a great sort of comedic energy in this film. It just has so much physical energy moving through all the scenes and everything, just adding so much into it, getting into the moment, getting into so many things. Even if he is adding in those moments of just dedicated police lieutenant and everything, that he's very much committed to resolving all these weird occurrences that are going on throughout the entire town and everything, he still has all these great moments where he just has that energy that just adds more character and personality to character, that you just really want to enjoy what he has to offer. You're entertained a little bit, but he doesn't go too far with it. He just has that right degree of everything to make him an interesting, kind of enjoyable character without going too far and trying to steal the show. He's just enough of a character here to really kind of add that sort of enjoyment and sense of fun to him without becoming too goofy or whatnot. You still maintain a certain level of believability with this guy, that he is a police lieutenant that is doing a good job, but also has so many different kind of quirks or whatnot that makes him a very interesting character to watch. But the film does introduce yet another character, which is a sort of CIA operative of sorts that Mel, the guy from the U.S. Embassy and everything, calls on to kind of help them storm the Bloodlust castle and everything. It's kind of a pointless character in a certain way, because I guess Ted Nicolaou, the film's writer and director, really kind of wanted to add in sort of a little bit of a comedic type of character who's a bit more of a gun nut type of guy to kind of help them along on this journey and whatnot, but ultimately is fairly pointless in the film, because he shows up, he helps them scale into the castle and everything, he goes in there and then he gets killed. So it really kind of doesn't add anything worthwhile to the film. He just kind of sticks out a tad bit, because his tone is a little bit different from everything else that's going on in the film. It's a little bit silly. It's a little bit too much. It's a little bit off the mark or whatnot, and just like they could have easily written around being able to get them into the castle somehow, some way. But regardless of that, I feel like the rest of the cast, carrying on from the previous film, does a very consistent job with everything they did in the previous film, and continues on their storylines, continue the momentum of the overall plot of the entire series forward, and just keeps a good consistency overall, which again I think is one of the good strengths of this film, to maintain a certain level of consistency. And if I feel like, because like I said, Subspecies 2 is a little bit more faster paced, has a little bit more going on, I feel, in its storyline and everything, has a little bit more things just happening in the storyline. This one feels a little bit slower paced, kind of taking its gradual time to kind of, again, develop the characters and not having so much plot to deal with in general. But it's good enough stuff to kind of continue on from the previous film. It just feels like, yeah, you got a really good sort of build up there with Subspecies 2 that has a really good tight pace. This one's a little bit slower. There's maybe a little bit of a frivolous element there with that CIA guy, and just feels like there could have been more to it in a certain way. And even the climax of the film still leaves things very sort of less than strong of a payoff, and again leaves it open for yet another sequel, which even Charlie Band at the time, the head of the studio, was saying, well, this was intended as like the last film, but if you guys are really interested, really going to send us fan mail and everything, yeah, we'll go ahead and do another one. So it's like we're never really intent on totally closing the book on the franchise, especially after just shooting 2 films. definitely could see more going on. So it's like, it's never a definitive end for the whole thing, so there's not a definitive resolution. So it still feels like there's threads that are still going to fly off in the breeze at the end of the film. So it doesn't feel like there's a real payoff to the build-up you had in the previous film. It's still another slight, not less of a cliffhanger, but there's still loose plot threads and still things that are just there as a loophole to go into yet another sequel. So it's like, it just feels like you wanted to have a little bit more of a payoff, a little bit more something to it, a little bit more personally, emotionally satisfying at the end of the film. But obviously they did want to leave that door open, so it's kind of like that double-edged sword where you want to pay off, but they also want to have things open up to continue the franchise on. So it's like one or the other you got to deal with or whatnot. So it's like an interesting thing there was like, it's a decent enough climax, but I think the one of the previous film was had a little bit more intensity, a little bit more visceral type of quality and everything. So it's a little bit of a balancing act in that type of way. It's like this film has more depth to it, a little more layers to it, a little bit more emotion, a little more things to just explore overall, but it's not as exciting. It's not as strongly, tightly paced. And even though you still have fantastic cinematography here from Vlad Pianescu, who just captures some gorgeous vistas in this thing. Just so many shots of sunsets just look absolutely beautiful. And there's so many moments of just great artistic beauty using fire and shadow and everything. This is a cinematographer who really knew how to make all these things look very, very beautiful throughout the course of this entire film. It's still a very good looking film that I think it holds up very, very well. And even the score here, again, weaves through a little bit more of a sorrowful, sort of sad, tragic atmosphere to it in general that I think just, again, aids the film on the levels I was really going for. So I think everything they had with the tools that they had available to them really were used to really kind of enhance what Ted Nicolaou really wanted to explore with these characters and these concepts overall. I think he did a very good job getting these people involved and just delivering very high quality results. And again, not as many makeup effects in this film as the previous one, but you still have some great stuff at the end of the film where you just start seeing Radu just burn in the sunlight and just everything oozing out of him, just like really grotesque type of stuff, but just like it's so absolutely satisfying on that level. Just see another good set of makeup effects just ooze out on screen and everything. I think they're just a really good sense of quality to this film that is, again, consistent with the previous film. I just think that some of the story elements could have used a little stronger payoff, maybe a little bit more depth, just a little bit more exploration of what they had there. But for what it was, I think it's a good sequel that doesn't disappoint terribly much at all. It just goes off in a little bit more deeper direction that maybe some people might not have wanted to go that way. Maybe weren't that into seeing like a romanticized Radu and everything. So it's like, might be something that takes a little getting used to. Maybe a few views of the film to really kind of just latch onto it and kind of let it settle in and get used to that kind of feeling of it instead of just the sort of a little bit more two-dimensional Radu who's just this vile beast or whatnot. I mean, if you want to delve into it and get a little bit more of that sort of depth to the character, this is the film that really just does do that. I think they do it very, very well with very good performances, very good writing, and very good direction. I think this is a well-done film that Ted Nicolaou should be proud of. He really does feel like this is the best film of this franchise and everything, that he does like because it has that depth, all those extra layers of the characters. And I think that's a good thing to hold up, that he did try to delve further into things and deepen the story in a certain way. So I really think that's good. I think there's good performances and good stuff all around in Bloodlust Subspecies 3. Again, if you're fans of the franchise, definitely post your comments below if you kind of agree with some of those kind of feelings that I have about that. It might take a little getting used to a little bit more of a romanticized Radu or stuff like that, or in general, just what you feel about the franchise, because I don't know if or when I'll get around to the fourth film, let alone Vampire Journals, which is sort of a spin-off in a certain way. But regardless of that, definitely post your comments below, guys. And if you want to check out Full Moon, hit up the links below. There'll be links to their DVD site and their streaming site where you can definitely check out Subspecies and a whole bunch of other fantastic genre fare. So thanks guys, comments below, thumbs up on the video if you enjoy things, share the links around, and of course there's always the Patreon if you're interested in kind of supporting the cause around here to get a little bit more fantastic, exciting new content developed very soon. Definitely hit that up, and thanks guys for watching. There's a lot more Forever Horror Month coming up soon. So thanks guys, take care, bye bye.